Alright, I want to quickly go over a very basic setup using Vray with a model that I actually got from Revit. So if I open up my file here and show you guys what I've got, I brought this in from Revit, and what I did was I brought it in through the linking panel, and I just grouped it by materials, and then I bound my object in 3ds Max, and then I ran a multi-converter on it, which you can actually get online on ScriptSpot. And what that does is that just converts all of your materials over to Vray. So I have this object, my model now, and if I select on this, for example, and I look at it, it's called Clear Reflective, and if I hit M to bring up my materials, you can see this is the material right here. Or if I click the eyedropper and click on a different, that's my standing seam roof. But if I click on the pick object and click on that object I have selected, it's the clear reflective material. And if I start to change the color of this, you can see that changes here in my scene file. So this is the file that I'm going to be working with, and I'm just going to do a very basic kind of setup right now with this for exterior lighting in Vray. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to save this with that color change to it, and I'm going to go to reset and go to a fresh max file. Just because when you import stuff from Revit, typically you get the lighting system and other stuff with it, and I want a perfectly clean max file. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to references and XREF scene, and I want to hit add, and I want to select that building file, hit open, and I want to make sure I'm not bringing any lights, cameras from that file into my scene. So I just want, essentially just the geometry from it. And if I turn it, on and off, you can see it's popping on and off on my screen there. And if I go here, you can see the object is here on my screen, but I can't select it, I can't make any modifications to it. If I go to my material browser, I can't do any modifications here. That's because everything's in that separate file, and the only thing that's here is essentially a reference to that file. So I have to make all my material changes and everything else in that other file, and this file is basically just going to be my file where I'm doing my lighting and my camera. So if I go to top view by hitting T on the keyboard, Z for zoom, F3 to turn it into wireframe, I'm going to go to my cameras here, go down to Vray, and put in a Vray physical camera. I usually like a little more extreme perspective. I'm usually lowering my f-stop down to a lower number, and I'm usually also cutting my shutter speed in half. I switch my white balance to pure white under my custom, and I turn off my vignetting so that there's no vignetting on the corners. You click, you drag, and where you're dragging to is where your target is, and where you first click is where your camera is. So then if I look at my camera here, you can see I'm kind of floating there in the corner, and I actually want to grab the target. And what's nice, since there's no geometry kind of there, I can easily select the target and grab it to where I want to. Select my camera, hit C for my camera view, and then I'm gonna put a guess vertical correction on that. So let's just say this is my view. Maybe I rotate this around a little bit so it's not quite as a just elevational view, and I bring this a little closer, and then I'll hit my guess vert again. Maybe I'll drop it down a little bit lower, grab my target, move this up so I get some more extreme perspective here, and again hit guess vertical. So okay, this is my final view that I'm kind of happy with, and I'll just go with it for right now. Next thing I want to do is come in here and just drop in my sun, which again I'll switch on create light and switch it to Vray. I'm going to do Vray sun. For my purposes, we'll just say that north is on the left side over here, so we have east, south, and west. So I'll do my sun coming from this side over here. I want to automatically create an environment in my sky map. I'll switch to my front view just so I can hit W on my keyboard. So I hit F for front view, Z for zoom, and then W for move, and then I'm going to move this guy up just into position, something like that. And what I want to do is decrease the multiplier to something like, we'll just go for like 0.1 for right now, and actually we'll do like 0.2 for the size, so I get nice crisp lines for my shadows. And then intensity multiplier, we'll drop this down to like 0.1. So if I switch to my camera view by hitting C and F3 to kind of go into the shaded mode, you see the way the sun is kind of affecting my stuff here. I need to go into my render settings, and if you followed along with some of my other videos up on YouTube, you know, I go through just some of the settings and what I'm doing with it. So I'm just going to quickly go through here, switch it over to adaptive DMC. I'm just running previews. I'll lower this value here. I'm going to turn my environment on and make sure it's pure white. For my color mapping, I want to make sure my subpixel mapping is on, my clamp out value is on. I'm just going to leave it on linear multiply for now. Turn on my GI, switch it to light cache. I want to show my calculation, turn it to very low. We'll turn these values up though much higher so it's more refined. Then when I go down to my light cache, I'm going to turn this down. Since it's an exterior scene, I turn it pretty low. Really, you can leave it about 250, and then I'll turn on show calculation. And then I want to lower this value down and turn that value all the way up to 1. And then lastly, I'll just turn up my memory limit here a little bit, and I'll turn this value down. I usually like to use 32, and I kind of explain or talk about it just a little bit more. I don't go into full details in my other video, but those are basically the settings that I'm using for most of my stuff. And then as I need to increase quality, I just turn this number up as needed. But for right now, since this is just kind of a super low preview, I'm just going to render it out at 1. What I want to do now is I want to come in, and the first thing that you're going to do is you want to make sure that your material override is on, and you want a pure white material in there. So we can just call this white. And with that white material in there, when I go to hit render here, it's basically showing me what's going on with my material. And if I right click here and hold my right click, it gives me my values for the red, green, and blue, and as I move around you can actually see the different values. So the goal here is to get my lighting on my model for my materials to be pure white. Now one of the things I have to do is I have to come into my Vray tab, come down to my GI environment, and if I actually pull this up, I had a Vray sky that I automatically created when I dropped in my sun. So I'm going to click and drag this over here and make an instance of this, and I'm going to just call this sky. And then I'm going to click and drag, and when I click and drag, it makes a copy of it. You can see there's no chamfers here, so it's not active anywhere, and I'm just going to call this GI. And then I'm going to click and make this an instance in my GI panel here. I then want to I'm going to close out of here, and I'm going to close out of here, because now I'm going to control everything from my material browser. And if I go into top view, zoom, what I'll do is I'll turn it on to the manual mode, and I want to make sure I link it to my sun. Again, I'll turn on the manual mode for my sky and link that to my sun. But then I want to turn my intensity down to like 0.2 and 0.2 for each of those. I'll go back to my camera view, and what I'm going to do is I'll make a clone of this just so you guys can see the difference when I hit render here. And you can see my GI value is now affecting everything a lot more, and you can see even my sky is different because it's now linked to my sun. So what I want to do is I want to come into my GI value, and I'm going to really turn that down to like 0.1 to matching the sun. I'll click render again. You can see that's much better. I don't have any of that weird kind of blue haze there. It's basically just a pure white. You know, and my shadows are, if I go down even lower, say to like 0.02 and hit render, you can see my shadows and the overall brightness of it. You know, the shadows are much darker, the overall brightness is much darker. So you know, I think I'll just match the sun at 0.1 in terms for the GI. And then for the sky, you know, I could always turn this up a little bit more if I wanted my sky to be really, really bright. Maybe that's the effect I'm going for, but again, I typically like to be somewhere near to what my value is for the sun. I think 0.1 is a little bit dark in this situation, so I think I'll leave it at that original value of just kind of 0.2 here, just because I kind of like the overall brightness of the sky there. And what's nice is if I go into my view here and close out of this stuff, go into my front view, if I grab my sun and I really drop it down to like a sunset here, you can see the color value changing on my model. When I hit C to go back in my camera and I hit render, because I have that stuff linked to my sun, when I go to render it out, because I've dropped my sun down, the sky automatically updates, all that stuff automatically updates for me. If I click and I drag my sun over to here and I go into camera and I click on render again, you can see the sun is now visible in my view, and all that's kind of updating because I have linked that stuff to my sun. So that is a really kind of critical thing to do, or to make sure that you do, is to link that stuff when you're setting up your GI and your sky values. So that's basically it for the basic lighting on my exterior file. If I then go into turn off my override material, once I get it to that white base, what I can do is then click render and start to work with my scene and materials, and getting them to look as they need to look in my file. And if I needed to, let's say I have my white material on and I'm rendering this out and it has like a purple hue to it, or even even if I say I switch back into my front view, I'll drop my sun back down, come to here, hit render, you can see that one, it's kind of dark, so bring it up a little bit, and I'm going to crank my intensity to like 0.3, hit render, just so you can see that my values here are not pure white. I'm getting some weird kind of coloration to it. Now if I need to make some kind of color correction, I go into my camera, so I click here and just do select camera, and what I can do is I can come to my value range, click on my eye picker, click on that value that I want to be white, and when I hit render again, you can see what it's doing is it's trying to compensate for the sun and actually create a white material. Now it's going to be difficult the further you are away from white here. You can see there's quite a bit of difference between the two. So you might even have to come into your sun and add a filter color in on your sun, just to get it a little bit closer in terms of what's going on and how things are looking in your file. But if you didn't want to, if you don't want to really mess with that, you could just kind of mess with the camera setting here, and hopefully you get it close enough to where you're happy with it. I typically find that if you are using daylight, you kind of go with the daylight preset and hit render. Switch to my camera view and hit render. That's usually the best in terms of lighting, but you can see in this situation, since I have my sun really kind of cranked up, if I select this sun again, we'll turn this down to like 0.15, just so it's not as bad. That's basically how you're going to deal with correcting if you have some weird coloration stuff going on. You can kind of come in here and try and grab some of this custom color stuff. But like I said, the further you are away from white, the kind of harder it's going to be to get it to that pure white. You can see this has quite a bit of blue in it. So you can play around with that and kind of get it to be where you need it to be. But the closer you are to white, the closer your materials will look the way they should look when you go to set them up and go to get your stuff in here.